Breakups suck. They mess with your self-worth. They leave you teetering on the edge of a full crash out, ready to say screw it to everything. You stop eating right, sleeping right, functioning like a normal human. Your brain loops every conversation like dash cam footage you didn't ask for. Car shopping does the exact same thing. It convinces you that this next decision will define you as a person. It has you up at 2 a.m. comparing consumer reports, dealership sites, Craigslist and Auto Trader listings, convincing yourself that this one is different. You'll fall in love on the test drive, picture your future together, and then 5 minutes later, you're wondering if you settled too fast or missed something better down the street. This story is about 2 breakups, one with my ex and one with my Volkswagen. Welcome to the Throttle Culture Podcast, a space where design, history, and emotion meet at Redline. Here, we celebrate the stories behind the cars and the people who see more than sheet metal and specs. They see connection. Today's episode dives into one of the most infamous automotive scandals of our time, Volkswagen's Dieselgate. A story of trust, deception, and the unexpected ways a car can still change your life for the better. This is my Jetta TDI story, so let's get into it. "2016 was a hinge year for me. I was 5 years into my career, in a steady, long-term relationship, and we had freshly moved into a luxury apartment in Hollywood. Big girl job, big girl rent, big girl confidence. Life looked good from the outside. We were building, or at least I thought we were. I was holding down the fort, paying bills, leveling up my career, making responsible decisions, planning forward. While he was, living a completely different life. And I didn't find out all at once. That's never how it happens. It came in fragments, inconsistencies, stories that didn't quite line up. The emotional equivalent of a check engine light you keep ignoring because you don't want to deal with it. And then the truth hit, cheating, a whole double life. Entire chapters I wasn't in. While I was focused on improving our lives, he was auditioning for someone else's. It all felt humiliating. Not just the betrayal, but the realization that I'd been operating in good faith while someone else was playing a completely different game. If you've been following the Christy and Desmond Scott breakup, you know what I'm talking about. Watching relationships everyone thought was solid suddenly unravel in real time. And the shock wasn't just that it ended. I think it was realizing how much of what we saw was curated, how much trust we assumed, and how fast the illusion collapsed once the truth surfaced. That is what betrayal does. It reframes the entire past. At the same time, I thought I was ready to make another grown-up commitment. No, not to marriage, but to a car payment. See, I was still driving around in my beat-up BMW 318 Ti with manual transmission, which really sucked in everyday LA traffic going from Hollywood to the West Side. So if I was going to lock myself into a monthly obligation, it had to feel worth it. Luxury features, comfort, something that said I have my life together, even if that was only partially true. I started out by looking at a BMW 328D at Pacific BMW. It was a certified pre-owned with low mileage in burnt orange with their California package, meaning it had the nicer wheels and sunroof, as well as other features. It was also the M Performance package with the nicer trim and exhaust, and it had the Steptronic paddle shifters. I took it out for a really fun test drive and fell in love instantly. But when it was time to work out the payments, I couldn't get it for lower than $500 a month, and that just didn't feel worth it to me at the time. Side note, can we please bring back 2016 used car prices too while we're at it? So anyways, I kept looking. Audi and Volkswagen were next on my list. There were limited options and compromises everywhere. But eventually I landed on a brand new 2016 Jetta TDI SEL. This one had the pleather seats, the sunroof, an upgraded sound system, and it all made sense on paper. It was going to cost about the same as a base A4 TDI, so I convinced myself I was being smart here. But you know what? I never loved it. The drive was competent and the MPG was incredible, And Bluetooth finally freed me from cassette adapters and FM transmitters. If you know, you know. I would game the paddle shifting to optimize fuel efficiency, so that made it a little more fun. And while it was comfortable, it just was so boring to drive. So boring, I'd fall asleep in traffic. Yeah, that car was like a lazy boy with wheels. Climate controlled, predictable, safe. The automotive equivalent of staying in a relationship because nothing is wrong, even though nothing is right either. I wanted out. Then my real relationship ended. 5 years just like that, gone. Now I was suddenly alone in an apartment I could barely afford, driving a car I didn't enjoy, trying to convince myself stability was the same thing as happiness. Until one day a letter arrived. And it wasn't from Volkswagen. It was from one of those big, high-powered law firms. It told me I was part of a class action lawsuit against Volkswagen. And this is where the two stories fully collided. I'm going to read you an excerpt from the letter of the class action lawsuit. It says, Volkswagen intentionally installed the sophisticated software into their clean diesel vehicles, which was designed to solely cheat state and federal emissions testing. Upon investigation, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, discovered that the defective vehicles were emitting between 10 to 40 times the legally allowable levels of nitrogen oxide. As early as May 2014, the EPA ordered Volkswagen to correct the emissions problem. Volkswagen failed to do so and continued to manufacture, market, and sell the defective vehicles under the clean diesel name. Volkswagen falsely represented to you that the defective vehicles were quote-unquote environmentally friendly and offered excellent mileage and performance. Volkswagen charged you a premium price for your clean diesel TDI vehicle, and you paid a premium for diesel fuel. Volkswagen has admitted that the quote-unquote clean diesel TDI vehicle you purchased or leased does not comply with state and federal emission standards. Your vehicle is not environmentally friendly. Even if Volkswagen is able to modify your defective vehicle so that it will only comply with emission standards, your vehicle will significantly diminish in value. It is likely that, after your vehicle is fixed, it will no longer provide you with the mileage or performance it once did. You will, almost certainly, experience difficulty reselling your vehicle at a price you would otherwise be able to get, had Volkswagen not perpetrated the fraud. So, this was somewhat good news to take me out of my misery. But I was still struggling. What made the situation worse wasn't just that Volkswagen lied, it was how long they lied. How many people they lied to, and how intentional it was. Globally, about 11 million vehicles were affected, nearly 500,000 in the US alone. These weren't random cars. They were sold to people who cared about clean diesel, and not just as a spec, but as a moral flex. Under testing, the cars behaved perfectly. But in the real world, the software flipped a switch. Emissions shot up to 40 times the legal limit. So that car that I thought was whispering to the planet was actually screaming at it. And finding that out felt exactly like discovering your partner had been lying straight to your face while making future plans with you. The fallout was massive. Volkswagen paid over $30 billion globally. Executives fell and the CEO resigned. And the brand never fully recovered in the US. Owners were given options, buyback or a fix. That fix, though, meant adding emissions after treatment hardware. It made the cars compliant, sure, but also slower, less powerful, and in some cases, less efficient. The personality of the car changed. That thing you thought you bought no longer existed. It's like staying with someone after cheating, except now the trust is gone and the spark is muted, and you're expected to be grateful that they fixed it. And even after the fix, the value dropped, resale tanked, confidence evaporated. You had to choose, walk away or accept something permanently diminished. And here's what no one really talks about after a breakup: the financial math. Because betrayal hurts emotionally, but the real damage shows up on spreadsheets. At first, the car felt like a loss. Monthly payments, insurance, a depreciating asset tied to a lie. Emotionally, I wanted to torch the thing. Financially, though, I had to slow down and think. And that's when I realized something important. I wasn't stuck. I was early. Volkswagen hadn't finalized the settlement yet. Buybacks were coming, but timelines were vague. So instead of letting the car sit there like a bad memory in my parking spot, I did what any millennial in 2016 would do. I turned it into an income stream. I listed it on Turo. And this was still the early days for car sharing. Demand was high, especially in LA. A clean, fuel-efficient sedan with modern features was easy to rent. The same car I barely wanted to drive suddenly became someone else's problem. And guess what? It worked. The car started paying me back. Month after month, rental income offset the payment. In some months, it covered it completely. In others, it came close enough that the car stopped feeling like a burden and started acting like an asset. Meanwhile, I didn't even drive it. I was walking to work. Yeah, because by the way, my life was actually improving after this breakup. I ended up getting promoted at work, and I ditched my overpriced Hollywood apartment and rented a nicer studio loft in downtown. My office was just a few blocks away. That meant the breakup was just a little blip in the timeline, so I was just letting time do its thing. When the settlement finally came through, I ran the numbers. Between the rental income from Turo, the class action buyback check, and another separate Bosch settlement check I got a few years later, I ended up making more money using that car than I lost by owning it. And that's the part that people don't really see. The smart decision here wasn't driven by emotion. It was strategic. Keeping the car after the fix would have meant accepting reduced performance, lower resale value, and dead capital tied up in something I didn't trust anymore. Giving it back converted a liability into cash, closed the loop, and freed me to move forward clean. Actually clean. Financially, it was the equivalent of walking away from a bad relationship before the real damage sets in, when you're more invested. Sometimes the smartest move isn't forcing something to work. It's knowing when the math no longer favors you. And when the time came to end everything, I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry either. I had clarity. I had extracted value. I had limited downside, and I had exited on my terms. That's the difference between a breakup that breaks you and one that teaches you how leverage actually works. When I handed over the keys at the Volkswagen dealership just a few blocks from my apartment, I felt calm. I took the check and walked home. There was no dramatic goodbye or closure speech, but there were 2 breakups that year. One with a man who lived a double life, and one with a brand that did the same. Both taught me the exact same lesson. If someone or something is constantly telling you how honest, clean, and perfect they are, you should probably take a closer look, because the truth always leaks. In relationships, in engines, and eventually in court. If this story resonated with you, it's probably because at some point you've been here too. Stuck in something that looked good on paper, trusting a promise that turned out to be performance, and learning the hard way that comfort and honesty are not the same thing. That is what throttle culture is really about. Cars, yes, but also decisions, timing, leverage, knowing when to stay in and when to walk away. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're following Throttle Culture on all platforms: Instagram, Threads, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. That's where I share clips, behind-the-scenes takes, and the stories that don't always make it into full episodes. And if you've got a story like this, I want to hear it. A car you loved, a car you hated, a deal that went sideways, a breakup that taught you something you didn't want to learn. Submit your story, DM me, email the show. You never know which one turns into the next episode. And before you go, I want you to think about this. Think about your favorite car memory, the first one you bought or the one that got away, the one that carried you through a season in your life. Because cars don't just take us places. They could also mark time. This is Throttle Culture. As always, my friends, stay driven, and I'll see you in the next one.